Good morning, everyone. This is Chuck Seark, your host of Rockstar Connect Lancaster, together with my wonderful wife, Janet. And today we're very happy to bring you another success seminar with our dear friend, Jose Johnson, who's going to present to us Living a Black Belt Life. Now, I won't go into too much detail about today's presentation, but it's definitely something that you're going to want to pay attention all the way to the end. Just a couple announcements before we get into the presentation today. We have our next live face-to-face business networking event, Rockstar Connect Lancaster, coming up on April 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Stoner Grill. So definitely check us out on the Rockstar Connect Lancaster Facebook group. The event is posted there. You can also find us on Eventbrite. Bring a friend. It's definitely a great place to be able to get connected with other like-minded business owners, professionals, and entrepreneurs here in the local areas. So bring your business cards. Definitely want to focus on building relationships, because at Rockstar Connect, it's where we connect networks together and we can all do more business. So we really appreciate you tuning in this morning. If you're catching this on the replay, definitely feel free to comment, ask questions. I know Jose will definitely be able to get back to you on those questions. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jose Johnson. He'll give you a little bit of a background on where he's coming from, but we're going to dig into living a black belt life.
All righty. Thank you, Chuck and Janet, and thanks everybody for attending. So, living a black belt life. I guess the first question that we need to ask is, what does that really mean? So, when we think about living a black belt life, when I say the word black belt, what words typically come to mind? So, typical words are like Janet. What do you think about when you think about somebody if they say they're a black belt?
A badass.
All right, they're a badass. Okay, Chuck, what do you think?
I think that they have superior self-discipline.
Okay, that's actually a really good one. See, a lot of times people relate the skills, the physical skills, with the rank. Now, after all the years I've spent in martial arts, here's what I can tell you. Black belt is less about skills and more about attitude. And to me, the word that best describes a black belt, a true black belt, and black belt living is unstoppable. You don't quit. You don't give up. Even when things are tough, you go through because you've set a goal, you have a drive, you have desire, you have commitment, and you are committed to seeing it through to the end. So for me, I am a black belt. Not only am I just a black belt, I'm an 8th degree black belt. I have won 2 U.S. national championships as a martial arts athlete. In 1993, I was actually a member of the U.S. national team that competed in China. Got an award of excellence there, and I was actually listed in a book that was published maybe about 7 years ago called "The Top 100 Extraordinary Chinese Martial Artists of the World." A lot of words. Chinese books tend to have very long titles. So that's just to say that my skills and my accomplishments in the field of martial arts are a very high level. All right? So I'm an internationally recognized expert in Chinese martial arts and energy arts. But that's really not who I am today. Today, I'm an entrepreneur. I actually am a serial entrepreneur. I'm a consultant, so I consult with businesses to help them to develop a more mindful mindset for their corporate culture, helping with stress reduction and burnout. I'm a speaker, as you can obviously tell today. I'm a podcaster. I'm a working professional musician, and I'm also an author. I published a book a few years ago on mindfulness. And so these are all things that I am doing currently. And these are all a result of the lessons that I've learned through my martial arts training. Because who I am today and who I was as a martial artist are not quite who I was when I was younger. When I was a younger man, if I describe myself, I would describe myself as weak. I would describe myself as self-conscious. I would say that I had low self-esteem, that I actually suffered from stage fright, which is a weird thing to think about for someone who's a speaker and a musician. And I viewed myself as a victim. Now, this is who I was, but it's through my journey of martial arts that I became someone completely different. Now, the first phase of that journey taught me the power of belief. So when I was a kid, I was very, very weak. As I said, I had very, very bad allergies. I was very, like the summer, I couldn't even leave the house. I was so sick. And I was also very shy. My parents moved around quite a bit. And so I found myself in situations where I was kind of the outcast. And at the time, I was about 6.5 years old, living outside of Pittsburgh in Aliquippa, which in the mid 60s was not a very pleasant place to live. And I remember walking home from school and basically getting my ass beat every day. There's a group of kids who terrorized me every day. And after a little while, my dad got kind of fed up with it, and he said, I'm gonna teach you how to box. Now you have to understand that as non-athletic as I was, my father was that much more non-athletic. So him trying to teach me to box was a colossal failure. So after about an hour, he said, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm going to sign you up for martial arts classes. So he signed me up for karate classes. And we drove to Pittsburgh the next week. And I have this distinct memory of a building on Allegheny Avenue. It's a very old, classic building with the old freight elevator, with the elevator man, kind of like being here at the candy factory. And we get in there, and the guy takes us up to the floor where the martial arts school was, the dojo. And we walk in, and I'm so excited. I'm going to finally learn to protect myself. And we go in and we talk to the sensei, and I'm reading the magazines and stuff. And my first class was basically, signing the paperwork, getting my uniform, learning how to tie my white belt, and learning to count to 10 in Japanese. It was a karate school. And I think I might have learned like how to do straight punches. And that was it. That's my first lesson. Okay. So I go home, basically only remembering how to tie my belt. And the next day, I'm walking home from school, and the same group of kids is coming up to me. And I'm thinking to myself, here it goes again. I'm going to get my ass beat. So my body starts to naturally respond to the thoughts that I was having. My heart started to race. I started to sweat. My breathing became very, very shallow. I was afraid. And as one of the kids came up to me, and I can still see this as clear as day, one of the other kids grabbed him and said, hey, man, don't mess with him. He knows karate. And they left me alone. They walked away from me. It went from me being afraid of them to them being afraid of me. And the only thing that actually changed was their perception of me. I didn't have the skills to back it up, but they thought I did. And so they left me alone. And so the next day when I saw them in school, walking down the hallway, and they're kind of looking at me out of the side of their eyes like, oh, is he going to try and get even with us? And I could walk freely. I could walk with courage. I could walk with confidence. And it was that moment that I learned that your beliefs about yourself transcend everything else. Now, did I get the skills later? Absolutely. Right. But I didn't need the skills right away. I just needed to change the way I thought about myself and the way people thought about me. And that created a change in my reality. So, and that's why I have this quote: beliefs are not facts. They aren't facts, but our beliefs become our reality. Right? So if you believe that you're a winner, if you believe that you're dedicated, if you believe that you're competent, that you're capable, then that will become your reality. But if you believe that you aren't capable, if you believe that you're dumb, if you believe that you're a loser, well, that will become your reality. So our beliefs are so critical. And that was the major lesson I learned at that junction in my life. And it's really helped me to become the person I am today, because I attack everything from the mindset perspective. Right? Now, later on, we'll move ahead. Like most kids, I lost interest in doing martial arts. I became more interested in doing music and academics. But later on in life, I came back to it in my late 20s. And when I came back to it, I came back because the seed had been planted in me, but I was still dealing with some issues, particularly stage fright, which is odd because I had been on the road as a professional musician. And when I say stage fright, I wasn't afraid to get on stage. No problem with that. My problem was with being the only person playing. Put me in an ensemble, no problem. Put me in a solo position, I would start to freak out. So I started to think about martial arts as a good way of me to deal with this problem. So what happened to me was really quite interesting in that as I got bit by this bug, I started to read like all the magazines, and I could remember, having my subscription to Inside Kung Fu magazine. I'm looking at all the articles and stuff, and like, oh, this teacher sounds really, really cool. I really like to meet this person, and oh, this style looks kind of interesting. I'd really like to learn that. And there are a lot of competitions that were going on at that time, and this is in the late '80s, early '90s. And I remember looking at it and looking at the results and saying, wow, most of the top athletes in the US study with like 3 teachers. I really love to study with some of those teachers. And I started looking more and going, wow, there's this one teacher who lives in Pennsylvania. I was living in Ohio at the time. He said, he lives in Pennsylvania. Maybe I'll meet him someday. Maybe I'll get a chance to study with this guy. And so, I kind of going along my thing. And the teacher that I was interested in, his name was Nick Grayson, and he lived in Sharon, Pennsylvania. And I found out through a friend that he was going to be doing a seminar in Columbus, where I live. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go to the seminar. So I go to the seminar. Nick and I hit it off. And he's like, hey, why don't you come up and study with me sometime? Wow, here's something that I really wanted to do. And he's offering me to come and study with him. Yeah, come up, stay at my place. Wow, it's even cooler. So that got me started on this trajectory of becoming a competitive athlete. And he told me, what are your goals? And I really hadn't thought about it. So I sat down and I mapped out a 10-year plan for myself as related to martial arts. So this was 1992 by this point. And I said, okay, in 1 year, actually it was 91. So I said, in 1 year, I want to compete at a national level competition. In 3 years, I want to be one of the top 10 athletes in the US. In 5 years, I want to be a member of a US team and one of the top 3 athletes in the US. And in 10 years, I want to be a full-time martial arts instructor. Sounds like a good plan, right? 91. Fast forward, 1992, attended my first competition in Orlando. Okay, right on track. 1 year, boom. 1993, not only was I one of the top 10 athletes in the US, I actually made the US national team that year and competed in China, as I said earlier. So now I'm suddenly 2 years ahead of plan. My 5-year plan was to be a top 3 athlete. In 1995, I was the #1 ranked athlete in the US in 10 different divisions. So that happened so quick. And by the end of 1995, I'd established myself as a full-time teacher. So I basically went from being right on track to my goals, and through persistence, surpassed my goals. I crushed every one of my goals way ahead of schedule and to a greater degree than I ever anticipated. So what that taught me was the importance of having a clear vision and having a clear plan to attain that. Now, was it easy? God, no. It was really hard. It was a lot of work. But I learned the most important lessons that you could ever learn, which is that if you set a goal and if you dedicate yourself to it, if you work at it unceasingly, if you don't give up, you won't just achieve it, you will absolutely crush it. So the important thing to me was this, that what you get by achieving your goal is not as important as what you become by achieving your goal. And this is a quote by Zig Ziglar. So what I figured out was that it wasn't about all the things that I did. It was about the person I had to become in order to do what I did. You see, a lot of times people are looking for the solution to the problem. They want, what's the best way to lose weight? What's the best way to build my business? What's the best way to do this? They want the strategy. Well, the strategy isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is actually the mindset. Because if you have the right mindset, if you have the right way of living your life, all the successes that come are just a natural result. You don't have to try to do them. They just come to you because that's the person that you are. And that's what I learned, these lessons about living a black belt life. So the first lesson I learned is something I call the Kung Fu equation. So what is Kung Fu? Everybody thinks they know the answer to this question. Jana, what's Kung Fu? Kung Fu Panda?
Like, I don't know, like part of karate?
Okay. Chuck, do you have any idea what Kung Fu is?
Not other than it's a type of martial art.
Okay, so that's what if somebody says, hey, what do you do? I do, do Kung Fu, all right? Kung Fu does not mean martial art in Chinese. Okay, that's a very common mistake. It's become synonymous with martial arts, and most people will call Chinese martial arts Kung Fu, but that's not really what Kung Fu means. Kung Fu actually means a skill that is obtained through time and hard work.
Wow.
So in China, if someone saw me practice my martial arts, they would go, oh, how's the Kung Fu, right? Good skill, good Kung Fu, right? But if they go to a restaurant and they taste a really, really good dish, they'll say to the cook, oh, how's the Kung Fu? Really, really good skill. So anything that you're really good at that indicates that you have worked to obtain that skill, that's called Kung Fu. So what's another word? What's a word that we use here in the United States to represent that concept?
Competency.
How about mastery?
Mastery.
Yeah.
Mastery, okay? So Kung Fu is mastery. It's when you can do something at a high level consistently. Okay? So, are you familiar with the 10,000 hour rule? Okay. Well, it's not really a rule, but there's a research, it's based on research done by Dr. J. Anders Ericsson. And Dr. Ericsson basically found that to attain a elite level of skill takes approximately 10,000 hours. Now, sometimes it takes a lot less, sometimes it takes a lot more. Now, it was quoted by Marshall Goldsmith in his book Outliers, and that's where people kind of count on this, oh, it just takes 10,000 hours. Not quite. But if we roll with that for a second, right? If we think that mastery takes 10,000 hours of what Dr. Ericsson calls deliberate practice, if we run with that idea, to me, the Kung Fu equation is this. Mastery in anything equals the percent effort that you put into something times the amount of time you spent practicing it. So in my years of experience, here's the two common failures that people have in terms of achieving mastery or success in whatever it is they're looking for. The first is that they're not putting in enough effort. As I was saying, I kind of had a very fast track to success in martial arts. And that confused a lot of people. Especially even when I was teaching full time, I would have people come to me because of my reputation in the industry. They would come to me after studying, many of them studying and teaching for longer than I had been training. And many of them were frustrated. How did you become so good and so knowledgeable when I've been training for twice as long as you? And my response was, you haven't trained twice as hard as I have. When I was in the peak of my competition career, I was training 40 hours a week minimum. It was a full-time job for me. Most people are lucky if they go to class 4 hours a week. So for a very short period of time, I was putting in massive amounts of hours. The last season, my last competition season, in the span of 4 months, I put in conservatively 5,000 hours of training. So if we're thinking about 10,000 hours, just think, I put in half of that in just 4 months. That's a lot of effort. So that's how I got so good so fast. So if you don't put in the amount of effort, right, if you're half-assing things, it's going to take you a much longer time to achieve a level of mastery if you ever achieve it. Now, the flip side of that is that you do have to put in the time. You can work really, really hard, but if you don't do that over an extended period of time, then you don't get the full results. Again, this is one of the things that I dealt with a lot of students. They would come in and they were all gung-ho and they were training and they trained like maniacs for the first 6 weeks and then get frustrated because they're not as good as me, which I had to say again, well, the reason you're not as good as me is because you've trained hard, but you just haven't put in the time. So it's finding that balance. You have to have the effort and you have to have the time spent practicing. If you can do that, then whatever it is you're looking for, you will gain a high level of mastery. Right. The next one is called ugly kung fu. Now, ugly kung fu, I got this saying from one of my teachers, and she says, ugly practice makes beautiful performance. Most people are afraid to look bad. To gain skill, to gain mastery of anything in life is going to require you to make mistakes. It's going to require you to struggle. I would often tell my students, if they're training to learn some new difficult technique, like some sort of jumping technique, aerial technique, I would tell them, if you don't crash and burn while you're doing this, if I don't hear thuds on the floor, if you don't come away with a rug burn, then you're not training hard enough. Because that means you're playing it safe. You need to push yourself if you want to gain this skill. That is the ugly practice. Ugly practice physically is when you're making faces, when you're sweating, when your clothes look unkempt, right? If you walk into a gym and everybody in there is bright and smiley and there's no sweat and they're just wearing their beautiful Lululemon stuff, you have to question the amount of work that you're putting in. Right? When you walk in and everybody looks like they just got done running a marathon, you know this is a hardcore place. This is a place that they're actually training super hard. So if you want to have those good results at the end, you have to be willing to look ugly in the process. Success is not beautiful when you're doing it, right? When you're learning it, right? It becomes beautiful at the end, right? So as Einstein says, anyone who's never failed has never tried anything new. Right? When you try something new, it's always going to be difficult and it's always going to be confusing and it's always going to make you look dumb until you learn it. And that's when you look smart. But everybody wants to bypass that looking dumb phase. Right? So ugly kung fu, whatever it is you're looking to be successful at, be willing to look unsuccessful. Be willing to be unsuccessful at it at this moment so that you can learn the lessons that are going to set you up for your ultimate success. All right, this next one, Yi Chi Li. And it's a Chinese term. It basically means intention, energy, and action. That's the phrase that we learned, that your intention leads your energy to action. Tony Robbins says, energy flows where attention goes. And this is absolutely true. For me, the way I like to phrase it is, if you aren't getting results you want, Don't change what you're doing. Change how you are thinking, because your intention is driving your energy. As I said earlier, if you think that you are going to fail, then your energy goes towards actions that support that belief. You will set yourself up for failure. You will sabotage yourself. If you really believe that you're going to be successful, then your energy moves you, your actions move you towards successful principles. So never underestimate the power of your mindset. That is what drives everything in your life. So remember that your energy will always follow your intention. And practices of facing your fiercest enemy. This is a great one. Old Chinese saying that when you practice martial arts, that you should imagine that you are facing your fiercest enemy. But then when you are facing an opponent, as if no one is there. Sounds like some fortune cookie stuff there, all right? So what does that mean? And why is that important? Right? So when we think about what keeps us from being successful, so if it's in a martial arts match, if I'm doing MMA, for example, what is my ultimate success? My ultimate success is to beat my opponent, right? Knock him out, have submission, so it's to win. So that would be my goal. So what would be holding me back from my goal? Well, some would say that it's the opponent, but not really. What holds you back is your own abilities. It's your technique. Right? If you're skilled enough, then you don't worry about the opponent. Right? You know that you're capable. You know you're competent. You know you have all the tools that you need to win the match. But here's what generally holds us back in every aspect of our life. First is ego. In the martial arts arena, if you have ego, when you think that you can't be beaten, well, then sometimes you can slack off. You don't work as hard. You don't take things as seriously. We see this a lot in other sporting events. When people become so confident, they become overconfident. And that overconfidence leads to underestimating their opponent. And that leads to their ultimate failure. But in the business world, our ego is our belief that we don't need help. We all need help. There's no one that knows everything, that has mastered every aspect of life. So your ability to put your ego aside, to admit when you're wrong, to admit when you don't know something, to seek help, to seek support, that is one of the critical keys for you making the achievements that you want to make. Another thing that holds us back is fear. Right? We're just afraid. We're afraid we're going to fail. We're afraid of what we're going to look like, what people are going to think about us. Ignorance holds us back. Now, when I say ignorant, I don't mean like ignorant. I'm saying ignorance in that you just don't know. You don't have the knowledge. And as I said before, not everybody knows everything. The greatest people in the world, the people with the most success, are those who seek out knowledge for themselves, or they seek out people with the knowledge that they need and bring them into their circle. So this is like the concept, if you're familiar with the concept of mastermind, they're a big component of, like, if you ever read Think and Grow Rich, the mastermind is a critical component of that, because you don't have access to all information yourself. But when you bring in a group of people that have unique skills and talents that are all working towards a singular goal, then you can harness all of that energy. So ignorance is one of the big things that holds us back. Laziness, right? So you can have all the knowledge in the world, you can have all the resources in the world, but if you don't get up off your butt and do it, it's never going to happen. So when we think about it, we've got ego, we've got fear, we've got ignorance, we've got laziness. So what's holding you back? It's you. And it's just as simple as that. A lot of times people want to say, well, society's holding me back. Okay, look, as a minority, I get it. The system is not rigged in your favor or my favor. But my ultimate success or failure is not dependent on that. It's dependent on me. Because I know if it's twice as hard for me to get ahead than someone else, then that just means if I want to get ahead, then I got to work twice as hard. Simple as that. I will outwork you. I will do what is necessary to achieve what I want to achieve, regardless of what obstacle others put in my path. Okay? So it is not them, it is you. It's not your friends, it's not your family, it's not your boss. If you want to get ahead, if you want to master something, the only person standing in your way is you. And finally, this concept. Every day, a little progress. Now, this is something that there's a very famous Tai Chi master that lived here in the United States, and he used to say this all the time. Every day, a little progress. And I heard it, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Then recently, I got turned on to a concept called the aggregation of marginal gains. Now, if you're familiar with cycle racing, especially like the Tour de France, the British cycling team was for years the worst team, period. They were horrible. They got a new coach, Sir Dave Brailsford, and he introduced a concept of training that he termed the aggregation of marginal gains. It's the marginal gains theory. It's the economic theory, basically. But he applied it to cycling. And this quote is from Sir Dave. The whole principle came from the idea that if you broke down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and then improve it by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put them all together. So while most people would think about, well, like we've got to cut our times by 10%, we've got to increase this by 50%, we've got to 100% because we're the worst team in the world. So we got to do all these things. His idea was to take every aspect. And when I say every aspect, I mean every aspect. He wanted the bikes to be 1% more efficient. He wanted the nutrition to be 1% more efficient. He wanted the sleeping schedules to be 1% more efficient. Everything was about creating very small change, but sustainable and consistent change. And the British cycling team went from the worst team in the world to the most dominant team in the world, just through this principle. Now, in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, James quotes Brailsford, but he explains a little bit further and says, if you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. 37 times better by just making 1% increase. So just think about that for a second. If you are a salesperson, if you increased your customer base by 1% every day, and we're 37 times greater by the end of the year, does that sound like a good deal to you? Does that sound like something that is possible? And if you've got 10 customers, then what's 1%? Right? If you're making $10,000 a month in revenue, and you just, instead of trying to double your income, if you just say, I just want to try and increase by 1%, and you do that consistently, then you will get this great return. The way that this works is not just the compounding effect of it, but also the way it affects us psychologically. Because if I told you you have to do something 20% better, 30%, 40, whatever, your brain is on going, I can't do that, man. It's too much work. But if you say 1%, man, I can do that. That's easy. So you kind of trick yourself into it. And once you get into the rhythm, then it's so much easier to continue the process. Right? So I'm going to close with this quote from Aristotle. Excellence is an art won by training and habituation. We do not act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but we rather have those because we have acted rightly. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So when it comes to living a black belt life, it's not about the training regimen that you set up. It's not about the teacher that you have. It's not about that. It's about who you are. If you're a successful business person, it's not about your strategies. It's not about your marketing campaign. It's not about your sales funnels. It's about who you are, because who you are is how you act habitually. And those consistent habitual actions are what create results. So being a black belt is not just a rank, it's a way of life. And living a black belt life is not about accomplishments. It's about your attitude and your habits. So my encouragement to you is to develop the attitude and the habits that represent a black belt life, that represent a life of mastery, of dedication, that make you unstoppable. So thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. You can connect with me. My handle on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, they're all at Coach Jose Johnson. My website is josejohnson.com. Feel free to reach out to me, and be happy to help in any way I can.
We have some questions.
Awesome.
So we have some questions here from online. Do you have any advice for staying consistent when anxiety and overwhelm kick in?
Yes, I do. The first is to look at what anxiety and overwhelm represent. Anxiety represents fear, uncertainty. And I think, particularly in our current environment, we've gotten really freaked out by the uncertainty of life. Well, guess what? Life is uncertain. It always has been. It always will be. Is that sometimes it seems more prevalent than ever. So the first thing is accepting the fact that you don't always know what's going to happen next, and you don't always have direct control over those things. So the consistency is not so much in the actions, it's in the mindset. It's just saying to yourself, I've been through good times, I've been through bad times, I will get through this time. And just keep your mind focused in on things that give you a sense of grounding and stability. So that's like practices of mindfulness, where when you learn to observe your situation in a non-judgmental way, you don't put the emotional overlays, you just, you accept it is what it is. This is my personal motto. It is what it is. It becomes what you make it. So when you want to be consistent, it becomes about being true to yourself. Because when you can say to yourself, I am a committed person, I'm a consistent person, then it's not about the actions that you're doing. It's just you're being true to yourself. It's like, well, a tidy person will always clean up after themselves. They don't have to be told to do it. They don't have to create a routine or ritual. It's like, if you like things clean, then you'll always clean. So you just have to change your mindset and perspective on those situations. And then you can create habits or rituals around things, and there's a lot of ways you can do that. And I guess it depends on the specifics of the situation. But if you're looking for ways of doing that, I would strongly suggest the book that I referenced earlier, Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a really good book to help you understand ways of structuring your life so that it fits with your core principles.
So how does somebody get started, right? So they've been going through their normal patterns, and maybe not, they've developed routines that aren't necessarily helping them progress forward, but they know they want to be in a different place. They have hopes and or dreams of a better future. How does somebody get started? Like, what would be those practical first steps for somebody to take to live a black belt life, by being aware of who they are and, starting to take steps for that 1% improvement?
Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer in the concept of how you do anything is how you do everything. And this relates to what I learned as a martial artist, and then the study I've been doing on success principles, particularly those of, as I mentioned earlier, of Anders Ericsson. It's the practice, but the deliberate practice is more than just going out and do it. There are components to it. And one of the biggest components is that you need to find highly skilled resources. So as a martial artist, that's what helped me to become, when I really blew up, was because I was surrounded by people who challenged me. So I have great classmates. My teacher was very highly respected, and because of him, I met some of the top martial artists in the world and had a chance to train with them. So I was constantly surrounded by people who pushed my skill and knowledge to a higher level. If you're in business and you're looking to create that kind of life, then you need to get a mentor. Multiple mentors, actually. You should have coaches for pretty much every area in your life that you want to see improvement in. If it's about your body, then you need to find a good personal trainer. You need to find a good nutritionist. You need to find people that are highly skilled, and not just knowledge skill, but have actually attained the kind of success that you're looking to attain. And be with them and learn from them. That, to me, is a critical thing that, most people, they want to do it on their own. And yes, ultimately, you are responsible for it. But you borrow the knowledge and the experience of others. So the first step is make a decision. That's it. Everything starts with that decision. Commit to doing one small step today. And the best small step I can suggest is to find somebody that can support you and help you and educate you on your path. Sometimes it's to, pat you on the back and give you the support. Sometimes it's to kick you in the butt and get you moving the right way. But those are the critical factors. Make the decision. And I also say, things like set your goals, and then put yourself in the environment where success is the natural byproduct.
So as we start to identify that and which experts to ask first, there's different thoughts and theories on how to approach that, right? Do you take if you read the book Eat That Frog, mm-hmm. right? The concept is dive into your biggest, hairiest, scariest task of the day and work until it's done. So you go after the biggest one. So if somebody's at a point and saying, things got to change, mm-hmm. and they follow your advice, they find experts to where they can lay out a clear, successful path from somebody who has the confidence and doesn't have anxiety about, is this the next right thing for me, mm-hmm. to get that guidance. Do you attack the big goals first, or is there a particular foundation that you want to lay so that way you can make it more efficient and effective to attack your big goals, or how would you approach that?
I think in terms of strategy, everything has to be based on who you are and your personality. So you do have the people, and there are times I think that, yes, you need to eat the big frog, but there are also times when you don't, or that's actually counterproductive. So it's understanding and having a level of, of how it affects you personally, and how it fits with your personal concepts and your beliefs. So with that being said, what I tell people and what I try to do is I look for what are called metas. And so I talk about meta habits a lot in some of my coaching. And a meta habit is the habit above the habit. It's the habit that supports all your habits. So I think about it as, if I could only do one thing, what would be the one thing that would create the most impact? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the frog. It doesn't mean that it's the one big thing. It's the one thing that has the greatest impact. And often, that's the smallest thing. It's really it's not taking on a huge task. It's just identifying the linchpin. It's the one thing that will put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's the one thing that will put you in the best possible position, so that then the bigger things becomes so much easier because this foundation has been laid. So I always, if we use an example like for a business, you know, people are, you know, they're constantly bouncing back and forth. Well, you know, do I need to be using Facebook? Do I need to be using Instagram? Do I need to be using this? And what strategy should I have? A sales funnel? And they're bouncing over all of these different things. And maybe, yes, you do need to do those things, but maybe your energy would be better spent instead of looking at those platforms. Maybe your energy would be better spent retooling your product. Maybe it would be refining your sales pitch. Maybe it'd be better spent understanding your customer base. So because if you understood who your customer was, then you would know where they are, and then you would know how to reach them, and you would know how to speak to them instead of just throwing a bunch of crap out there and hoping that it sticks. So the one thing, the meta would be clarity on who's your customer avatar. You know, then everything else will fall into place. But if you don't get that clear, then nothing else falls into place. So for me, I think it's really, and this is where the skills, like the mindfulness-based skills that you learn through practices like martial arts have been beneficial for me, is to be able to sit and to think about my thinking and to really focus in and analyze the situation and say, here are the strengths, here are the weaknesses. This is from a martial arts point of view, is saying this is my point of attack. This is the one thing that's going to give me the best bang for my buck. So this is where I'm going to focus my energies.
Yeah, I think that kind of lends itself to what I was laying in bed last night thinking, and came to the idea of, you know, they say somebody who's successful is a constant learner, right? Somebody who continues learning. And many times I would think of that as, okay, well, I need to be learning new skills. I need to be reading more books. But actually, I came to the realization last night that as we learn more and more, back to that 1% concept, we start to see things from our perspective in a different way, whether it's understanding who it is that we're looking to help, right? The more people we can help, the more our business can grow, but then how to speak with them by knowing where they are, what they're thinking. So, and really having that deeper understanding of how you serve the marketplace in whatever business that you're in, that to me is probably one of the most key consistent, you know, being a constant learner, to continue to peel layer by layer to get deeper and deeper into understanding how it is that you can help and how you can connect with somebody to be, you know, to speak to them where they are when they're there. Right. So that's fantastic. You know, how you answered that.
Yeah. Well, one of my teachers always said, actually the one who said about the ugly practice, beautiful performance, she also always say, study the old lesson to gain new knowledge. Because when you learn something, you learn it from the perspective of a beginner. You know nothing about it. Then you go on and you have experiences, and you come back and you'll see things that you didn't see before. And maybe also sometimes you will hear something from someone. This is the frustration that every teacher has, is someone will come back and go, oh, coach, I heard this really cool person say that if you do this, then you'll get better. I'm like, I've been telling you that for 15 years, dude. The thing is that they weren't ready to hear it, or they heard it in a way that made sense to them at that moment. And so I think that's where you can't just say, you know, read a book or take a class and go, oh, I know that. Well, no, you know what you know right now. But 5 days from now, 5 years from now, it's going to be something different. So I believe in always gaining new knowledge, but it doesn't always mean getting a new source. Sometimes it means going back to things like what I was presenting today, which are these are principles that have been around forever. And sometimes we call them different things, but these are success principles that go through every aspect of life. And if you just go back and keep studying it, you'll start to find a deeper level of knowledge. So certainly go out and find new voices, but don't throw away the old stuff. Always go back and revisit that, because you will find some new knowledge from that.
I think that also helps clarify the practice of maybe things that feel a bit monotonous, but it's doing things consistently, right? Over and over, that you start to see them in different ways, and it starts to mean more to you in your experience. So absolutely, I think this has been absolutely fantastic. We've got excellent feedback here online. Any other final closing remarks? Janet, do you have any specific questions?
Yeah. Just to go back to your previous question, Chuck, I would just say that the most important thing, if you want to make a change, just get started. Just do something. Do something today, and start really evaluating your beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about your situation. And I'm living proof that your beliefs can be changed in a heartbeat, which can change your life immediately. And then obviously the longer you go on with those consistencies, the greater the change you're gonna see. So change your beliefs about yourself and your situation, take action, and find the resources that you need to help you on the path. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Jose. Excellent presentation, fantastic reviews online. Just a reminder, folks, we do meet face-to-face for live monthly business networking. It's coming up on April 14th for our next event at Stubby's Grill over in the Overlook Park area. So thank you again for joining us this morning, everyone. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.
Woohoo!